We start with our next first panel of the day, creativity and the role of big data. How is big data and artificial intelligence impacting in design and trends? How can tracking customers' buying preferences and behaviors help predict the future of these trends? Do we really know what customers want? How do we build an emotional connection with designs and brands? A lot of questions, and we will have some answers for the people that we are going to meet now. Moderates this panel Beatriz Sánchez-Guillén from Condé Nast, and the speakers are Jeff Watts from Edited, Robert Figel, StyleSage, Valeria Dominguez, Adolfo Dominguez, and Matthew Drinkwater, Fashion Innovation Agency. Please welcome all of them.
And let's try.
Where do you want me?
Perhaps over there, Valeria. Great.
Does this work? Okay.
So, good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming. I'm Beatriz from Condé Nast Spain. I'm Deputy Digital Director and Head of Data, and I have the privilege to moderate this panel about big data and creativity. Let me introduce you our guest. Here we have Matthew Drinkwater. He's the head of the Fashion Innovation Agency at the London College of Fashion, and he has delivered some amazing things like the wireless clothing for Microsoft and even the first digital skirt for Nokia. He has also done something amazing like a bionic arm, printed 3D printing for the to celebrate the launch of Star Wars, The Force Awakens. And he's doing a lot of work regarding innovation and future, right? And here is Geoff Watts. He's the co-founder and CEO of Edited, which is a big data company. It was founded in 2009, and it's delivering like big data solution to the fashion industry. Among its clients, it's Gap and Topshop. And here we have also Valeria Dominguez. She's e-business and omnichannel director for Adolfo Dominguez. Adolfo Dominguez is a Spanish fashion company founded on 1976. It is also listed in the stock market, and it has like 650 shops around the world. So it's such a big company. Valeria is a frequent speaker in e-commerce events. She's a reference, and she's been working on digital sales like for a lot of years. She has a lot of experience. And finally, we have Robert Figel. He's co-founder and CTO of StyleSage, and he won the last year competition, a startup competition. Now he has the business card and not the competitors. He's also running a big data company, delivering solutions for the fashion industry. And we are going to talk about the role of big data to make better and more efficient decisions on a daily basis. We want to discuss which benefits today a fashion company can extract from using big data solutions. And we will also talk a little about the future and what can we expect regarding data. And we will also try to figure out the right balance between big data and creativity, as in the fashion industry, creative teams are very strong, and which is like the right balance. And Valeria will try to help us to figure out everything related to that. So let's start. The dynamic will be, I will ask some questions, but we will really want to have a conversation. So even though I ask Geoff or Robert or whatever, they will chat about it, and everyone is invited to participate, okay? So let's start about the present. And for that, I would like Robert and Jeff to give us their view and talk a little about their platforms. In fact, if you had to convince Valyria to buy one of your license,
We were just doing that, I
what
think.
benefits can she takes from any of your platforms when on a daily basis for a fashion company? That there are a lot of people here that also are in the same situation. So go on.
You'll need you, Robert.
I can
take it away.
start. Convincing Valyria definitely is a challenge, so I'll try. So at StyleStage, we help fashion brands and retailers understand their competitive landscape. And we do that by scanning millions of e-commerce products around the globe and understanding and analyzing those products to create some visual insights. And so our customers, using those insights, they can understand the market and their position and then take action based on those. And they can do that from a very kind of strategic, high-level, 30,000 feet view of the world, down to very granular, complex analysis and really understanding things like drivers of product success on a product level. And what's unique about StyleStage is that we combine all the data that we collect with some latest technologies and things like deep learning image recognition or natural language processing that enable our machines to understand the products in a very similar way like humans do. So for our machines, for example, a dress is not just a dress. It's maybe a short A-line dress with off-the-shoulder neckline and a blue flower print, and maybe it's made of cotton and polyester for plus-size women. And by really understanding products in the context of fashion and in that data domain helps us to show insights that are very relevant to fashion professionals and speak their language. So using those insights, they can immediately take action and not need to have a PhD in statistics and run some crazy analysis themselves, but basically just see those insights and take action. We do work with some of the largest fashion brands around the world, most of which have a multi-billion-dollar revenue. And we also work with our consulting partner, the Boston Consulting Group, who trusts and uses our insights to consult their clients on some of their most strategic questions, such as international expansion or pricing and assortment strategies. And I think the real challenge today is not about getting lots of data. Data is kind of everywhere. It's more or less easy to get. The real challenge is making that data relevant within the organization and align the organization that way, making it accessible and making it insightful to align the teams, and especially, and I think we'll hear more later, the teams of the commercial teams and the creative teams. Aligning those two, there's quite a gap, and so our vision is to close this gap with data insights.
And Jeff, what?
Okay, I'll have a stab. Our businesses are similar in some respects, actually. So the way we think about it, though, is inside any fashion business, there's a very important sort of retail operation. And the people inside that part of the business that sort of control the outcome for the business and make the difference between a business sort of thriving and withering are the buying and merchandising team or the trading team. And we help them make the right decisions. So we're a tool for those people to use every day and help them align their decision making. And actually, we were having an interesting chat before we came out. The thing, it's kind of a given that a brand needs to have great brand handwriting, a really sort of authentic design and a real sort of origination of their creativity that is sort of important and unique to their brand. And I think in our business, my co-founder Julia was a designer, and the original thesis for the business was how do we help designers make better decisions. But actually, when it kind of came down to it, we realized that designers usually do make great decisions. It's when it gets to retail that things need to be tuned up. So we take sort of the world's retail data. We're monitoring like about 1,000 brands. We monitor them in sort of almost every language. So and that's 1,000 retailers rather, and probably hundreds of thousands of brands now. We're able to monitor them in pretty much any language, so even sort of Chinese, Japanese, Korean. And we help those guys look at the market in a consistent way and tune up their trading in market, which is increasingly a thing that's happening. So when a product launches, the product will get changed, the decision about where that product sits on the page may change, and those sorts of e-commerce decisions are really important as e-commerce becomes a bigger part of retail. But we're also able to help retailers that don't trade online at all. So it's like, it's a set of tools for the people inside the retail business that make the biggest decisions, I think.
And do you find resistance when you go to a fashion company and can explain your platforms, your tool, just to have a pulse of in which point we are, like an industry?
So
because definitely data brings efficiency to the decision making, right? But is it difficult to evangelize, or?
Can be. If you walk in the door and you walk up to the head bar and you make terrible decisions and we're going to help you make it better, then you're not going to really be welcomed. And the other thing is they might sort of show you the front door. But fundamentally, if you think about most retail businesses, like a really famous or a really successful dress buyer might have 3 or 4 great seasons, and then all of a sudden that business falls on its face and they get eviscerated in the press, they lose their job, and they'll turn up somewhere else a few years later. And that's really because a lot of fashion retail decisions have been made by licking a finger and sticking it in the air and seeing which way the wind's blowing. And getting that precise, getting that tuned in, that can help those guys. So if you've got sort of a visionary customer and a customer that gets it and a customer that's open to change, then everything goes swimmingly. It's probably the same sort of question that people were asked when their typing pool got replaced with word processors 30 years ago or something.
Yeah.
So it's kind of we don't take away people's creativity. And I think this is I'm probably speaking for you guys as well. I don't think we take away anyone's creativity. We just help them make more commercial decisions.
Absolutely. And moving to Valyria, how is it to deal with creative teams and also making decisions on data that you do every day?
Right. So I think that sort of fashion is an interesting sort of business because it's sort of a mix between art and science, art and business. And it's really an entertainment business at its core. And so when thrill and novelty and sort of seduction are such a core part of the reason why someone wants to associate with a certain brand and buy something, then the prediction of that is very artistic in its nature and very unpredictable in its nature. And so what's very interesting about both Edited and Style Sage is that they're really working in the retailing part of it. What I think is fascinating is if machine learning gets to a point, artificial intelligence gets to a point where it can predict.
Yeah.
And that's where the real money is. And I think retail is very important, and often a business does well or it doesn't do well, not because of its creative capacity, but because of its retailing capacity. So not to take any sort of importance away from that, but I think the real money is in the prediction. And I think it's very, very difficult to predict. And as he was saying, some creative directors have 3 amazing seasons and then they just flounder. And it's the same thing as, when someone writes a book and their first book, is 25, 30 years in the making, and then they have a sophomore effort that is just not as good. So that's basically the crazy business of fashion that we deal with. And I also think it's really important to, I think where the real value is in these kinds of platforms is not as much the data collection and the data analysis, but sort of the difference between noise and music. And so noise is data. We live in a world with tremendous amounts of information, which is then very difficult to distill and draw the music from it. And so whoever comes up with something where you just give someone not a huge array of information to process that they don't have the capacity to process and extract valuable insights from, but actually give them the insights, then that's a very, very valuable business. And I think both of them are going in that direction, but I think once you get there, I'm buying.
Valyria, it's so interesting that you said music. Did you see the news about Microsoft recently? So Microsoft
machines make music?
Yeah. They have a room full of data scientists, and they've tried to put out 2 pop records that they assured their management would be great successes and they fell on their face. And I
Right.
think it's kind of like if you took the first sort of, I don't know, 4 Harry Potter books and fed them into TensorFlow with a natural language model and tried to emit the next edition of Harry Potter, it wouldn't work,
Yeah,
right? It's
it
like,
wouldn't work.
it's, I don't know that machines will ever get to the point, or maybe not in the next 20, 30 years, where you would be comfortable sort of saying to your creative director, see you later, because we've got this computer now.
Right.
Right. And if we gradually rely more on data, what will happen with the disruptive elements that shake an industry? Where will they come from? Fashion houses, tech companies, both relying on, what about the creative teams? I mean, I would like to hear Matthew and Valyria talk a little about it.
Where will disruption come from? Certainly not from the fashion industry.
Oh my God,
is my
that's a
answer.
headline, right?
If we're waiting for disruption, it's not coming. It will be technology that forces the fashion industry to change. And what's exciting for me is that that's happening right now. And the emergence of technology and social media has finally forced the fashion industry to recognize retail. So all of the discussions about see now, buy now, which have been dominating the industry and sending traditional fashion into meltdown, is just the discovery that if consumers see something, they might want to buy it. So that's opening a channel. And I think what's really exciting about that is, sure, it's for big retail brands like Burberry, who have a huge retail footprint, it's relatively simple for them to work their supply chain back so that the product hits market at the right time. For emerging designers, that poses a few more challenges. But those challenges represent opportunity. And Valyria was talking about the industry being emotion-led, and I agree completely that what you're talking about is purchasing, and that comes from a design. No one needs another expensive dress. You've got to want it. You've got to fall in love with it. And at what point can we begin to understand and predict consumer behavior? And there's some really cool stuff happening. I mean, what Jeff and Robert are doing is, in that online format, beginning to see patterns of behavior. And that online data profile that you take with you when you go shopping online follows you everywhere, and you can get suggestions on what you've bought previously and what might be interesting. But when you walk into a traditional bricks and mortar store, that stops. The retailers have no idea who you are, what you like, where you might go, what you touch, what you pick up. And I think, for our group at the college, we're beginning to help designers and brands use technology to explore that next step, which would be, if we embed sensors into clothing, would we begin to understand where consumers go when they buy a product? What do they wear it with? How many times do they wear it? When do they stop wearing it? If they stop wearing it, could we help them to recycle that? But also emotionally, can we begin to pull biometric data to sense some kind of excitement in store? And I think, sure, it's going to be a whole ton of data, and who begins to plow through that, I think, is a really big question. But those are the areas that I find exciting, and it certainly will not be the fashion industry by itself that does it. It's going to be dragged along by technology.
What do you think about it? Is it difficult to innovate in-house?
I do think it's difficult to innovate in-house. Large businesses become slow-moving animals. And usually change comes from outside, because when you're a startup, you may not have as many means, but you do have the freedom to choose every day what you do. And you don't have to deal with so many stakeholders, and you don't have to persuade as many people. And as a result, despite large companies being in the best position to innovate because they have both expertise in-house and the resources to do it, they're usually the last to do it and are usually behind every single disruption and every single innovation. And as a result, a lot of the changes do come from the startup world. I have to say fashion hasn't really changed too much, and it's very much ripe for disruption, because if you think about it, the way we still buy clothing hasn't really changed so much in the past 50 years. What's changed is how we communicate it. So media has been hugely disrupted, and who we're influenced by is more, some random person in Australia on Instagram that nobody really knew, but now has 1 million followers and everyone's tracking what they do. But the way we buy it is very traditional. Really, only 10% of clothing internationally, worldwide, is bought online, because the obstacles to buying online are huge. All of a sudden, when you're in a clothing store, you're using your 5 senses. But when you're online, you're only able to see and sometimes hear. And so that's just not enough. It's not very convincing. The color is often different when you receive it at home, because lighting affects the color that you show an e-commerce model, and also the coloring of the model. So a blonde model and a brunette model, colors are changed. You also can't see fabric properly. You can't see if the quality is what you want, and certainly fit is huge. So we're in an industry that is ripe to be disrupted on those levels. So the barrier to entry in fashion is very high, and that's why you don't see a lot of new fashion brands. And a lot of creativity goes through the big fashion groups, and a lot of creatives become employees. And that's because the barrier to entry is so high. But the barrier to disrupting these little things and solving these little problems is not as high. And so I think disruption will come from those little things. So sometimes when I give a speech, like recently I was giving a speech at the Santander Bank, and they were saying, how do we innovate? What are we supposed to be doing? Who's our biggest competitor? And so they're basically like a really big business, and they want a competitor to look like them. And I was telling them, the competitor, you're basically a dinosaur, and your competitors are like fleas that are all over your body, and there's not that much you can do about them, and they're certainly not big, and you don't know how to fight them, and that's how they will eat at you. They will eat at you very slowly. And so I think in fashion, there's a lot of opportunity in the how do you resolve fit, an application that you can scan your body and see how things look on you. How do we resolve all those problems that people have, how we can see things better. And so that's where disruption will come from.
And you want to say something?
Well, yeah, it's interesting that the most efficient and sort of scary retailer in the world, which is Amazon, has really done a terrible job of fashion. They're trying really hard in the UK and, in Europe, I guess you could say, and they've been doing a bit in New York, but they've just not cracked it at all. And it's interesting that, that many smart people and that much of a machine and that much of a delivery network and all of those sorts of things just really hasn't made the impact on fashion that they ought to have by now. But then conversely, if you think about a brand like BooHoo, who you might know in the UK, they've effectively built a brand that is for online, So they've kind of ignored quality and fit, and they've kind of said, okay, we're just going to throw a lot of clothes out, and we're going to put them out at a very respectable price point, and we're going to be really free and easy about returns. And they haven't focused on quality, and they're expecting people to only wear those garments 3 or 4 times, or maybe even not at all. And they're just, throwing them out online and don't even have a bricks and mortar presence. So there have been some brands that are just built for online, and they're very different to sort of traditional fashion retailers.
Yeah, and regarding the terrible thing about Amazon that you were saying, perhaps it's because the emotional and the experience Valyria was talking about. Exactly. I mean, you need more than an algorithm that clearly is one of the best, the Amazon one, and the delivery, but you need more. Sorry.
No, sorry. I think Amazon is definitely a winning firm, and they're very scary in regards to almost everything except fashion. Yeah. Why? Because their core competencies as to who they are, they're essentially a logistics company. They're an online logistics company. So if I was in logistics or online logistics, I'd be very concerned. I'd be selling my business and getting out of the space. But fashion is something completely different. It's much more art, and it's much more of an entertainment. And so Amazon doesn't know how to entertain because they're very Germanic. And so you go to Amazon for why? For reliability, for great pricing because you know that what they say, they will deliver. That has nothing to do with fashion. You go to a fashion business because you want to dress like the person that you feel like you are inside. You want to be loved by others. You want to be a part of a certain subgroup of society. It's completely emotional at its core, and Amazon has no competencies in that. And so while I would never try to compete with them in what they're good at because they're brilliant, I don't see them becoming a fashion player. I just don't see it. No matter how many funds and how much money they have to invest, it simply is outside of their current set of capacities.
I think the emotional part of that, that's exactly also what you said before. I think that plays into the unpredictability of fashion.
Absolutely.
Like, there's like no way that anyone, and not even machines, I think, in any future, will know what will be hot next summer. That's such a random thing, and it depends on emotions, it depends on things, celebrities that will wear anything next year, and there's no way to predict that. But I think on the other side, the creative part is one part of the business, but there's also a big commercial part, like how many products do I produce, how do I distribute them, how many color variations and prices and discounts, like all of that still needs to be decided. And I think, and this is the part where data and artificial intelligence, I think, can support businesses in doing that. But you're totally right. I think the creative part, that's really hard, and that's maybe even an impossible challenge to solve.
Yeah, I mean, it might be impossible, but I mean, I think what you'll see 10, 15 years from now is fashion players that we couldn't even begin to imagine. I think it's not beyond the realms of impossibility that the likes of Apple and Google and Facebook could be operating somehow within that space. In fact, if I was betting, I would imagine that would be a direction.
Yeah, let's talk about the future. We have 6 minutes for that.
6 minutes for the future.
And I would like to raise, what do you think the impact of data will be on creativity? Will data participate on creativity processes? And what kind of features, functionalities, or even products or whatever do you think we will see in like 5, 10 years, if we can imagine?
Data is going to have an impact on creativity. I think it's interesting when you talk about similar platforms and take them to designers and say, look at the trends, then they'll push back and say, I am the trend.
I am the
we
trend.
decide the trends. But I think artificial intelligence, machine learning are going to be able to create tools to help designers design. I think that first step will be some sort of collaborative process between man-machine creating. That's definitely going to happen and will happen very soon.
I have to see that. I mean, imagine collaborating a creative team with an artificial intelligence is quite amazing.
Yeah.
But you were saying yesterday that there is already an artificial intelligence that is creating music, right?
Yeah, that's right. And you know, as Jess said, it's not getting to that point at which you can just leave the computer to go make a hit single, but it is getting to the point where it can create a piece, and you can work with someone to put that together to make something. So in a fashion sense, there's a lot of data points out there. Is it possible that computers could begin to learn what style is? I think that's a possibility. I think, you know, those are things which we've been looking at for a long time.
Do you see that, Valyria, coming with your creative team using that kind of?
I mean, I don't. Sorry, I was like thinking about something else. I apologize. Can you repeat again? Because
we were talking about the artificial intelligence, like co-creating with creative teams. Do you see that?
I mean,
happening?
Sky's the limit. I mean, if you look at how technology has changed our lives in the past 5, 10 years, you think that anything is possible. So it hasn't gotten to that point yet, but it certainly can be. I was just thinking about what I want to do with technology as a consumer. So I was like in a little musing saying that I want to be able to, if I see a dress that I like on the street, photograph it with a sort of scanner and just buy it. And if I see something on Instagram that I really like or on Pinterest, I just want to be able to, you know, buy it in a one-click format. And so I was just thinking about all the things that I want technology to solve for me as a woman. I think when you're a working woman, you no longer can go shopping in the traditional way. And so I'm kind of frustrated, to be honest, with having to spend the little time that that I have going to shops where ultimately they never have the right size. If I like something, they never have the right color, and they can't get it to you, and they're not connected. The offline channels are not connected to the online channels, and I just find it very frustrating to never find my size. And so I don't like the way shopping is currently done. I want it to give me more service.
Absolutely.
And so that's what I was thinking technology should solve for me as a consumer.
Will we see the fashion Shazam or in the near future?
People have tried.
Yeah,
They're trying.
You know, I wouldn't bet against young people, right? So I kind of think there's a lot of people. It's quite interesting that Matthew's at LCF. You know, we've got we've got an education program at Attitude. I think we've got like 15 or so of the world's best fashion schools, and certainly if anyone's a student, get in touch on edited.com/education. We give it away to sort of undergrads because we kind of think that it's those people that are going to come up with the future, and one of them is going to wake up one day and think of a way to combine something that they've used on Snapchat or some piece of technology that they've been exposed to, and have an inventive step that none of us have thought of before, and they'll take over the world, and that's a great thing to be involved in.
Okay.
You see that traditional platform of website here, social media activity here, all pushing sales to this one channel. That isn't how anyone in this room consumes at the moment.
Right.
And the industry is going to have to change that pretty quickly.
Okay, thank you so much. We have 1 minute.
Oh, sorry. For me, the future is about kind of connecting the dots. I think coming back to the analogy of music and noise, I think there is so many noise and data sources. There is like the websites, there are people blogging, there is fashion shows, fashion Pinterest posts, and all of that together is just a lot of noise. And I think technology in the future will be able to connect all of those, understand kind of semantically what that means. Like someone posts a picture of this type of product and connects that to the fashion show here, and then kind of condense that and really extract the music out of the noise. And so that's for me where the future is heading to.
Yeah. So we have 30 seconds. So thank you so much, and thank to everybody. This is all. We could be talking like 1 more hour, but time is over. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.